Now welcome to another edition of News from Naboo with Thor's Lightning Takes. And let's get right to the news.
Okay, today I found an article, this time questioning Tony Gilroy about his political leanings in regards to Andor.
His intent with Andor?
He did an interview with the New York Times columnist Ross Douthat on his podcast Interesting Times, where Tony Gilroy had to deny multiple times that the show is meant to represent a left-wing revolution against the fascist authoritarians. Gilroy said, "I never think about it that way. It was never, I never do. I don't." Because Douthat was asking him if he agreed that this is a left-wing work of art. He's like, I don't think of it that way. That's not what it is to him. It's kind of more of a story that maybe encapsulates revolution on a whole, because we know that he used multiple historical sources, dating all the way back to the times of the Romans.
Yeah, it's not meant to be a commentary on today as much as people want it to be and want to place it in that box.
This was written before it could be commentary for today.
Well, you can try to make the argument that it fits today, but he did write this before the most recent election. So it is not meant to be a commentary on the current administration here in the United States, as much as some want to believe it is. Again, if you want to look at it that way, that's up to you. But that was not the intent.
Art is 100% open to interpretation. Once you put your art out there, despite whatever your intentions were, people will interpret it in a way that they see it. That's what art is. I find it a little off-putting that the journalist just kept pushing, saying that he really does believe that Gilroy's depiction of the rebellion against the Empire, in this series specifically, of course, is distinctly left-wing. He pushed it over and over.
But the guy who wrote it, or was in charge of it, he didn't do all the... Let's be real, Tony Gilroy did not do all the writing, but he oversaw the entire project. And if he says no, then it's hard to argue with that, I suppose. Again, you can view it how you want. You can interpret it as you want. As you said, art is meant to be interpreted. And there's always the argument that all art is political to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
So look at it as you want, but don't try to argue with the guy who wrote it and created it and say what his intentions were with it. If he's telling you that's not it,
right?
Believe him.
He admitted that it was political and inspired by his fascination with revolutions in world history, which he said in multiple interviews from the whole season, the whole show. He's talked about it from season 1 till now. He's talked about being inspired by revolutions throughout the ages.
Well, yeah, that's I think that's clear. You can even go back to season 1, which again came out during a different administration here in the U.S., and I think the message was meant to be the same. It was meant to be about how people, common folk, how they suffer and how they fight back.
Exactly. Even to the naked eye, you can definitely see the inspiration of what happened in France years ago.
Oh, yeah, the French resistance, certainly.
Absolutely.
That's
it's very
clear on Gorman, yes.
Mm-hmm. But Tony says the canvas that was being offered was just a wildly abundant opportunity to use all of the nonfiction and all the history and all the amateur reading that I've done over the past 40 years and all the things I was fascinated by. All the revolution stuff that not only I would never have a chance to do again, but I really wondered if anybody else would ever have the chance to do again. It's interesting because he got to take a personal passion. He's been researching and having a fascination with revolution for 40 years, for his lifetime,
Yeah.
So the fact that he gets to turn around and take something that he's always been passionate about, that could be part of the cornerstone of why Andor was so good, because he really loved researching on this subject, and so bringing it forward into Star Wars, into a world he's creating, when he's got all that experience and knowledge, it really worked for him.
Well, not creating Star Wars, but I know what you meant, creating in Star Wars. Yeah.
Crafting his story, yes. He said he was also, inspired by dictatorships throughout history, like Mussolini, because you could definitely see that, too.
Yeah, there's a lot of World War II going on in there, yeah.
He said, "I want to pay as much attention to the authoritarian side of this, the people who've cast their lot with the Empire and who get burned by it all."
That's what I like about Dedra's story. She was all in on the Empire, and even Cyril, who, again, you can argue didn't really realize what he was doing and didn't fully realize what he was doing, he paid the price for siding with the wrong guys.
Absolutely. They came out, they were fighting for what we know as the bad team.
Yeah.
Fighting for it with all their heart, And they still got squashed by it because that machine doesn't stop for one cog.
Yeah, that's what's great about Dedra's story. She was all in. She was trying to do her part for the Empire, and they're like, you kind of screwed up, and now you're going to pay the whole price, and we're going to do away with you, even though you're one of our best assets in all reality.
What's interesting to me is even after hearing all this from Tony Gilroy and how he's explaining it, the journalist kept arguing with him. He was right away going, the Empire is the right-wing authoritarian government being undone by the left-wing freedom fighters. It's a political story about revolution, and that's when Gilroy cut him off and said, do you identify with the Empire? Of course, the journalist said, no, I don't do that, but I don't think you have to be left-wing to resist authoritarianism. I see the Empire just as you described it. It's presented as a fascist institution that doesn't have any sort of communist pretense to solidarity or anything like that. It's fascist and authoritarian, and you're meditating on what revolutionary politics looks like in the shadow of all that.
So he just gets to tell Tony Gilroy what he wrote?
Yes, he does.
Okay. Because he so desperately wants to put it in that box. He wants to make a point with it.
No matter what side of the spectrum or where you decide to stand politically, and that is obviously your prerogative,
yeah.
I don't like when people, especially celebrities, no matter, again, which side of the spectrum they're on, I don't like when they're pushing their political beliefs and opinions on the rest of us. Because, for one, some of them aren't educated enough to know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Be it either side of the spectrum here. Either side of the
Yeah, the political spectrum.
Yes, exactly.
I think everybody knows what you're talking about, the left versus the right, which is the annoying part I find is if you're on one side or the other, you immediately just villainize the other side no matter what.
Right.
Which is kind of what I feel like this reporter is trying to do. He's like, well, clearly we know what side he's on, and he just wants to say, if you're on the right, you're just a terrible fascist.
It's like he wants to plant a flag that says, look, if you're good Star Wars, you're left-leaning, and you hate the right, and that's not what this was about. That wasn't what Star Wars is for everybody. And what's great is that it's open to interpretation. If that is how you choose to interpret it, you are more than welcome to have that opinion. But, just like with any other conversation and topic, just don't force your opinion on somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's the big problem. Everybody wants their opinion to be right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about finding truth anymore. It's about being right, and that's one of the biggest problems I see with the world. Nobody wants to listen to the other side. They just were like, okay, my side, no matter what we say or do, we are right, and I will defend it, even if your side has actually some good points. If I would stop and listen, I can't agree with you because it goes against my side. So you're just the enemy. You're just the bad guys, and that's it. All right, well, I think that's where we're going to end this one. I know we're going to have some interesting comments here.
Bring them on.
Well,
Everyone is entitled to their opinion.
You are, no, absolutely.
As long as you keep it civil.
Please keep it respectful. You
can
state your opinions down there. Just let's not turn it into a war and all of that, because that happens whenever you bring up this topic.
We're more civilized people with Star Wars comments.
More civilized comments for a more civilized age.
Yeah.
Anyway, leave your comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.